Hey folks, Matt T back, and right behind me I of course have my 2019 we just got done working on. I do not have Herbie with me, even though this is a Herbie video. We thought maybe it's time for us to go through everything, our trials and tribulations, and then let you know how much we actually put into old Herbie, and maybe some of our frustrations and any type of problems that were good. Hey, we had some good experiences, we had some bad experiences, and whatever happened with it. So that being started, we want to start from the beginning, some of the things we went through. So it's just going to be story time, our vlog, so to speak. And if you guys don't know, this is Jeff Scott. He is, of course, really very much instrumental, yeah, I can't even speak today, in helping me with getting Herbie up and running, because it really started out as just a oh by the way thing. So let me start from the beginning so you guys know how much Herbie cost, and we'll tell you at the very end approximately how much Herbie ended up costing and how our decision processes went along the way, because we started out in just low-key stuff, and it grew. As with most projects, it's always a never-ending hole we kept digging until we found the end, and we ended up where we were. But just for the very start for Herbie, I talked to this guy named Jeremy that was in our group, and he was selling Herbie for $1,000. Basically, the engine didn't run, the water pump blew, and the transmission, you know, whatever, it had problems. But he was willing to offload it, and I asked him, well, what is your lowest you'll take for it? And he thought, well, Bill, you know, you've been leading a group, $300. So we paid $300, or I paid $300 for Herbie, which was not a bad price, but then you had to add on the fact that I had to rent a trailer for about $500. And then plus the gas and everything that was spent by Jeff, and you know, the truck and everything else driving out to Pennsylvania and back, which was what, 1,600 miles?
Something like that.
It's about 1,600 miles. So you can add, you know, another say 1,500 hotel meals, all this other stuff, just to go get Herbie. So now we're approaching $2 grand for Herbie, essentially, just to get him and buy him and everything. So that's how much I paid for Herbie, $300. So you can see why we said, okay, it's a worthwhile endeavor for a car. And the body was in decent shape. It does have some rust, and we'll get into that later, but we did start working on it. And before we left, did we get the engine before we left?
Yeah, just looking here, that kind of a gutsy play, but I think we went out with the intention that this car only needed a motor.
Yes.
And because it had blown, the water pump took out the motor.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and tried to obtain a motor, because with back orders and things, I want to make sure we could have one.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, there were no 3.5s that I could put my hands on at that point. But my guy up at Ford did manage to score a 3.7. So yeah, I took delivery of that actually before we went after Herbie. It was sitting here waiting for the car.
Yeah, and that was the thing where Jeff and I got into this discussion. Is a 3.7 plug and play into a 2011 SEL that had a 3.5 in it? And as things went, I deducted that yes, a 3.7 is plug and play, because others had done it before and everything. So there's a few modifications we had to make. But overall, it was a plug-and-play situation. And then we retrieved Herbie, and then we got Herbie here and realized that, okay, yeah, the engine is definitely shot on Herbie.
Oh, it was terrible. He had the whole top of the motor taken apart, and I surmised he heated his garage with like a kerosene burner. So the problem with that is massive humidity for a long time. So though the body of the car was in good shape, everything around that engine was rusted solid, and the alternator couldn't turn it. Everything that was belt driven is just frozen with rust. So, and then he had the valve covers off. All that was rusted up.
And it had chicken poop all over it.
Yeah, it did.
It had chicken poop everywhere.
We went up into the hills of Pennsylvania to get this car.
True barn find.
Oh, man. That was the coldest load ever.
And we had to load it up. You saw the other video. We had to load it up with a tractor and a spare tire to push it up on the trailer. It was totally dead. So it literally was forced up on there. We sort of winched and pushed and everything else. But we froze to death trying to get it hooked up and everything else.
Mano did his due diligence. He stood there and just
Mano directed. Mano directed. And his wife Gita, wonderful as she is.
They're great.
They met us there and we got to meet Mano and everything in that process. But we drove back and got there, and of course Jeff dropped me off, then proceeded home and drove the rest of the way through a snowstorm.
Oh, got Cedar Rapids, started to snow, whatever. Got to Highway 150 heading toward Independence, and it got serious. And by the time I was in Independence, there's no road. And by the time I was getting close to Fayette, I was all over the road, sliding and everything, and you couldn't see the road. Good 6 inches of snow, and the plows had not been out. So I'll never forget, just let me make this last 10-mile stretch. And as I saw the house, I just gunned it. And I had just enough oomph to plow into my driveway, dragging the trailer, and a little bit up into my drive. It was just cattywampus crooked, but at least it was off the road.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
But the next part was bringing it in, and then of course we brought the girls here the first day, and they did a complete interior exterior buffing of Herbie to make Herbie look good, because they were disgusted with the chicken poop. But we did an evaluation of Herbie, and one of the things we did is we started doing oil testing. We wanted to know the status of the BTU, the status of the transmission, and the status of the engine. The engine failed. The transmission was questionable, and the PTU was horrible. It had failed. So now we know, not only did we need an engine, we now needed a transmission. And then Jeff found, what was it, remanufactured?
Again, Ford got a remanufactured order for me from the company that does it for him.
And then we had to make sure that we ordered the transmission that would go with the 3.7. So we had to make sure, and we found out and deducted that it really didn't matter, did it? Not to the 6F50 transmission. So we got a brand new, as you could say, remanufactured transmission directly from Ford. So now we have a Ford brand new engine, 3.7, that was built in September 2020. And then we got a brand new remanufactured transmission that was recently rebuilt. And then we got a PTU that Jeff donated to the cause that he had bought for what, your 2007? Yep. And that meshed right up into things, and everything was coming together. And so we started pulling the engine, and that was interesting. It took us a few tries, didn't it? For getting everything out, a couple weekends?
Oh, well, it took some time, but you had it nailed, because when we pulled that motor, there was not one wire, one connector, one fitting that needed to be removed, or it just lifted right out.
I went through,
took out the front,
and I literally pulled the harnesses out and disconnected them completely and set them off to the side. I mean, there was nothing, hose, line, connector, anything when we pulled it out. So we were meticulous about that and getting everything disconnected, and then undid the bolts and everything. We pulled that a whole unit out as one unit on the tripod, as you can go back and see the videos. And that wasn't that hard. I mean, we were anticipating something missed, but as Jeff said, nothing was missed on my part, and everything pulled right out. And we got it out, and then we just basically started working on, getting it cleaned up. We started cleaning once we got that done, and we ended up taking the subframe off on the front.
Because we found out right away you needed new steering.
Yeah, the power steering rack was shot.
Yeah.
So we went through an inventory of things, and it was every weekend from January through June that we worked on Herbie, essentially. But the more we dove into Herbie, the more we're like, do we use this? Alternator, that's gone. We had to get a new alternator because it was frozen. AC compressor, God knows where that's done and what it's been. It's been sitting forever. So all the accessory components on the engine were bought brand new Motorcraft. Nothing was made in China or anything. Everything on this car, the goal was mostly to be Motorcraft. Right. And so AC, power steering pump, new power steering rack. We got everything. We even bought new bolts. Okay, a lot of new bolts were used. We didn't reuse a lot of bolts. Some of them we did, but not all of them. So I would say we're 50–75% new bolts that go with everything we did. There are certain ones we used because we just didn't have them and we wanted to get it put together, but we cleaned them all up and got them polished up and looking good. So we pulled the subframe off, and then I took that subframe and I started cleaning it up. We cleaned the whole engine compartment up, did everything, and working on that, and that was meticulous. The AC condensers, the front end of the grills, everything was taken apart and disassembled. This whole car, every part was touched in the front end. And while Jeff was doing some things, I was doing others. I was basically the restoration side in some cases. Mm-hmm. And you did a lot of the other hoses and stuff for the front end.
Well, like you have to do a new condenser. You're not going to put in a new AC pump and then run old parts. So new lines, new AC pump, and then same with the radiator. You're not going to put a new old radiator, hook it back up to a brand new engine.
I think the only thing that we actually used was old was the power steering cooler, that steel loop. That was the only.
Because we never. Well, I'd say we never unhooked it, but yeah, you're right.
We never unhooked it, but we just never switched it. It looked good, so we just left it alone.
Yeah.
So there are some original parts, but hardly any. But you know, Jeff and I worked in tandem on this, and granted, I worked every weekend I could come up here, virtually every weekend. And then we got into February, and then Jeff sent me home and said that I had COVID. So I lost a couple weekends on that, but Jeff did keep going on it. But
Bill was pretty sick. Let's see, what was that first night? You were ready to call it a day. And so I went in the house, and he's just like laid out on the sofa. I could just tell he's gone. So tested him, and yeah, he needed to go home.
Yeah, so that ruined my weekend and the following weekend because it took me a while to get over that. But so we go there, and that's not the first time that something bad happened to me on Herbie. There's another time, but we'll get to that. But I refurbished all the parts, just to cut to the chase. Every part that was brand new for Herbie, subframe and everything you saw in my videos, have been cleaned, de-rusted, and primered with a core seal, rust converter, and then coated with truck bed liner. Every part under the car, suspension-wise and everything. Every component. So we redid the front end. And we liked it so much how the subframe turned out. Then we started taking the rear end next, right? We pulled the drive shaft.
We were waiting on something for the front, and we decided let's just knock out the back end. It won't take very long.
Well, we're waiting for a PTU, and I was trying to work out a deal with Dorman.
Oh, that's
and
what
it never came through.
Right, we're waiting on.
So we're waiting for them to make a decision if they wanted to sponsor us on it. And ultimately, I think in the long run, not to say bad about the Dorman PTU. But in a way, I'm glad I just went with the Ford one and called it a day. But so I got a wild hair, and he says, "Hey Jeff, let's do this." We started working on the rear suspension because we're going to take and check the parts. The more we checked, and the more rust we said, "Well, oh my gosh, do we want to carry on and try to refurbish these parts, or is it just better to buy all new Ford suspension parts?" So ultimately, it came down to let's just buy all new rear suspension parts, everything. So you can imagine taking the entire rear suspension out and throwing it off into the junk pile and buying all new, and that's what happened. Yep. Along with new bolts, right? Everything.
Yep. All the new suspension, the shocks, the brakes. We were going to reuse the brake.
The brake lines. We kept telling everybody we're going to use the brake lines.
Duct tape over the holes.
Yeah, just wrap some duct tape. We tried to play it, but. We took the suspension out. We figured out and I'm glad we did. We figured out how to take it apart, and we found out that pickle forks don't work. Jeff got it stuck. We had to put it in a vise, and we were trying everything. And then I finally told him, I says, here, this is how you do it. And I peek, and it came right out. But we got the rear suspensions taken apart, the drive axles taken out, everything was out. And then went ahead and ordered all these other new parts. And then we're thinking, well, we'll use the old axles. And then Jeff says, do we really want to use the old axles since we're doing all these new parts? So we got rear axles for it, and along with front axles. New drive shaft was ultimately, after we pulled it out, looked at it, and I was no. But that was a good call because we got the modified, updated drive shaft. Totally the new one from Ford that was totally different than the old drive shaft, which I think was a good call.
I would get rid of the old one because I was so afraid it wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
It looked so different.
Yeah, it looked a lot different. Ford changed the pivot points on it from front to rear, and I'm thinking that was the best thing on leverage for the carrier bearing they ever did. So that turned out pretty good. So we're going and buying all these parts, and then I says, well, Jeff, while I'm under here, why don't I de-rust it? I'll bring my needle gun in and descale it and wire wheel it and do all this stuff, and then I'll paint the entire underside with Seal. I'll refurbish the entire rear subframe, which I dedicated a whole video to that, and that was totally redone, and it'll probably outlive the car, tell you the truth. But I got under there and I was needle gunning and doing all sorts of stuff under there, getting rid of all the rust I could reach. And then sealing it with Seal to rust convert it, and then primer painting it, and I did not do any truck bed liner because I did not want to seal in anything. I just wanted the Seal to convert the rust, and maybe a little bit of primer paint here and there I put in certain places. So it's all sealed, and I'm telling you, it's sealed 2 or 3 times. So it's sealed under there. I got rid of the rust. But the funny thing was, here's the number 2 thing that happened to me. And I was under there working. I had a face shield and safety glasses on, and I was needle gunning. And my needle gun, Harbor Freight, you're my friend, yes, yeah, Harbor Freight. The needle gun exploded because I've been turning it so much, I actually literally unscrewed the thing. And when it blew a piece of rust into my eye. And I worked for a little while, but it was bothering me so much that I was at the deep sink rinsing my eyes out. And then I guess I'll let Jeff tell you, because next thing I know, he's on the security camera. So I'm just curious, I never really quite asked him what was going on, but let Jeff tell you what he saw me doing.
Well, I mean, the one time I'm not here, right? But I did have a security camera in here, so I kind of buzz in and talk to him and watch what he's doing. But yeah, he had something in his eye, and we were trying to figure out where the heck you go.
Yeah, but when did you notice I had? Because you called me and said, "Are you all right?" Because you noticed something.
Well, you kept rubbing your eye or something. I mean, I could just tell the way you're walking around it.
Yeah, I wasn't working anymore. I was sort of not working. So he got me on a security camera, and he says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I got something in my eye." I rinsed it out. It still hurts, and I could barely see. So ultimately, I decided I was going to go to West Union was it West Union? Yeah. And to the emergency room. The problem was my eye hurt so bad that I couldn't use my good eye to see. So it was a hard drive getting to the hospital because I literally could almost not see. Because if I opened my eye, the other one would immediately hurt. It's just one of those things that are natural. When one eye is open, it moves with the other one, and then it starts irritating stuff. So I ended up in the emergency room when I was working on Herbie. I scratched my cornea with a piece of rust, and they got me all situated, and that pretty much shot the rest of my weekend on that one. I carried on a little bit, but I just didn't had the oomph taken out of me. So got that done, went home, and then started working on the rear subframe and everything else that I had. Got that done. And then we just started reassembling the rear end at that point, because we figured why not? We'll get the rear end done.
Yeah, the car the body was really very rust free. I mean, of course you get a little bit under the rockers, but I know it's because Ford electroplates the body and all this and that, but whatever they didn't do that way was rusted to pieces. Like the subframes were terrible. And of course that makes your brakes, your suspension, your rotors, all that was rusted, as well as the motor. But the body was sound. It was a solid body. But by the time you got done,
surface rust is mostly what it was.
Yep. But by the time we got done, those subframes looked brand new. And of course that holds everything together. So yeah, there was nothing under the back of that car. There was nothing under it. And from there
it looked like it was a hovercraft, because there was no subframes, no nothing under it. It was just a body, a shell is all it was. But then we got the parts in, and we started putting together. And that's when my son, if you see my son, I like to call him the scary bus driver, shaggy hair and big beard and everything. He came to help one weekend. I thank him for that. And we got some parts put in, and he showed us some really short techniques. Because, by the way, my son is an award-winning, and he's won awards, diesel technician. Okay, he knows his stuff. And he used to be in the Army working on wheeled vehicles in the Army, which Jeff has Hummers. And my son offered to help you work on him if you ever have to work on him, because he knows Hummers inside and out. So, that's Jeff's go-to, I think, on that. So we got to the point where we're putting things back together, weren't we?
You bet.
And things were going back together. It went together pretty good.
Yeah.
The rear differential we did keep, because we found out, okay, will it work? Won't it work? Will the gear ratios work? We went through this, and finally we came up with one conclusion, and that is that it just didn't matter. It really didn't matter overall. We could not find anybody that said it would work or won't work. Everybody's wishy-washy, but everything said it will work, basically. So we kept the rear differential. It's original to the car. It's not that hard to replace, by the way. It's really looked complicated, but it isn't. So we put everything back together. And then we started putting all the components back in. We even put new rear brake calipers in. Brakes, rotors, everything was put back together on the rear end. By the way, we did not go with Motorcraft for the rear brakes. We went with the Napa Eclipse brand for calipers. And those are painted gloss black. They look really nice. So that's front and rear. I think that's the only place we really deviated from Motorcraft, is we went with the Napa because they were easier to get. And we liked them because they were painted and everything else, so it really worked out. But Jeremy had already given us all basically new rotors. We had pads that came with it and other things. So we had a lot of components that Jeremy already bought to do work on. So we incorporated a lot of those parts into this build that he bought. So we were given a lot of good stuff that came with this car. And that worked out for us too. But we got the whole rear end put together. And then it was a great day when we dropped the rear wheels on. We got new springs too, didn't we? Or no, did we use the springs?
Well, here, right here. That's the front. I think the rears, I think you're right. We reused them.
We reused the rear springs, but we got all brand new fronts, quick struts.
There's a lot of those that are obsolete now.
Yeah.
On building struts, you can't get all those springs.
Yeah. So we got the original springs, but we cleaned them up, and I, of course, sprayed them and everything, de-rusted them, got them all good shape. So that was good. We got it all put together in that aspect. And we didn't have any real problems with the suspension putting it in. It pretty much fell into line.
And we were just joking about the guy that was going to do the alignment. It would be his easiest day ever, because every bolt, every little meter disc, every little...
It was all new.
Everything's brand new. And we just cinched things a little bit, not too overly tight. We thought he'd have the greatest time ever.
Well, did he complain about the anti-seize? Because I was very liberal with the anti-seize for everything.
No, not at all.
Those bushings, I said, if I ever have to take this edge apart, I'm going to make sure there's anti-seize and everything, because I do not because if you ever taken a rear suspension apart, we literally had to cut these bolts out of the bushings because they were rusted in and there's nothing usable for them.
Terrible.
So we got all new parts, new bolts, new cam washers. Everything's new on that. So when that guy did the alignment, he's all done.
Yeah.
It made it easy. But then we moved up to the front.
Yep.
And then we started taking the parts. We started getting everything ready.
I guess we decided at that point we're just going to forget Dorman. We're just going.
Yeah, we're going without Dorman.
I mean, I'm sitting on a PTU. Why not?
And well, we painted the rear bumper too. We painted that black, and I even took the rear bumper and fluid filmed it inside, and I did the truck bed liner on the outside. So the back bumper in Herbie is black. It is not body color like your normal, Ford Edge. But once we got that all together, Jeff then took the bumper cover to the body shop because it had some little bit of damage to it. It had that repainted.
Where the tractor had to push it up onto the trailer.
So had that repainted so it didn't look so scarred up. Yeah. And then that turned out great. But then we went to the front end here and we started putting the motors together. That was a little bit of a workout, trying to figure out all the brackets and everything. Because
I'm hooking up the tranny to the motor. Yeah,
the transmission, then we started deducting we needed new lines for the transmission.
Well, and I got smart and decided it's probably best to pull the torque converter off and mount that first.
Which
normally I think it's easier to just leave it in the transmission, but whatever.
We did get it there. But we did a lot of changeover, as you saw in the videos, of moving some parts that we didn't want to buy that were just hardware. But all the lines and hoses that were transmission related are all brand new. Every single one of them. Every AC hose and line is brand new.
Then you pick up the old starter and thought, no, we're not going to put this on that. It looks too nice. So we got a new starter.
Got a new starter, but we did use some of the old hardware that I did, of course, clean up and make look nice and new. One thing on the motor, though, we did find out that we had to move all the stud bolts and switch them.
We had to do a lot of
little things on this 3.7 we had to do.
The oil cooler had to come off.
The oil cooler we had on it, we took that off and we put a new oil filter mounting on it because we did not have the lines and hoses for the oil cooler for this 3.7 because it was meant more for an MKT or something, wasn't it? Something that had a cooler on it. And we decided, well, it's a Ford Edge, it ain't going to be towing, we don't need this. So we got rid of it because we didn't want to run and try to figure out the hoses and all this stuff. So we do have a spare oil cooler for a 3.7.
And the crank pulley, you told them.
Oh, the crank pulley. Oh, talk about, we had it all set. We were going to put on the power steering pump, and we realized that the crank pulley on the new 3.7 didn't have a rib pulley on it because this 3.7 was designed to run with an electric power steering system for a newer vehicle. So we had to pull that old crank pulley off, and then we decided, do we reuse this torque to yield bolt? And we said, well, it was only used once. So we got a new pulley, and we put it back on, hammered it on, torqued it up, no problem, no foul. We got it all put back on there with the correct pulley. So yeah, that 3.7 had a few things we had to switch out, but it had all the holes in the block for everything we needed to do. All we had to do is add bolts and everything. We put the bolt brackets on, and I'm going to tell you that figuring out the brackets for the PTU and getting the transmission. Oh, the transmission! I should back up. Putting that transmission together was an exercise in searching the internet for everything and anything. I had workshop manual. I had the all data. We were going off of anything and everything, trying to figure out how to put this together because we wanted to make this transmission to this engine. And we even called your buddy, Nick, and asked him how to do it, what was things, because putting and marrying this up, we ran into a problem. We couldn't get a bolt in a hole. And that caused us to take the transmission off again, put it on again, until we realized, hey, this is a guide pin. It's not a bullhole. And we didn't see it. We couldn't get in there to see it, what it was. So we went through trials and tribulations and learning experience that way. Ultimately, we did it wrong, but we did it right. We got it together.
Yep.
Hindsight, leave the torque converter on.
Let's do that.
And it'll fill that circle hole when it marries up. Then you don't have spilled transmission fluid. Because after we got it all put together and in the car, then, you know, then Jeff's like, oh, it's leaking transmission fluid. Well, I said, that's probably still in the bell housing. But we got all the sensors hooked up on it. We got everything put on it. And, you know, we got it together. And we dropped her in. Everything fit.
And we had PTU put on at that point. Before we
put the PTU, the engine, everything was one unit. It dropped back in the same way that we basically took it out.
Easy, easy.
It just went right in, and then we started bolting everything up and the connectors. Yeah. Every electrical connector on Herbie has been cleaned with electrical cleaner and has adequate amounts of dielectric grease in it. Those plugs snap and come in perfect. Every plug and electrical connection that we touched, that we had to deal with, has been cleaned out very well and has dielectric grease, which will keep water out and everything else. So everything in Herbie electrically connected with connectors is clean and ready to go.
Yep. We had one thing though with the, was it a cam sensor?
The cam sensor, that's right.
They changed it. They changed the design and the plug wouldn't fit it. And I didn't know what the crap to do on that one. And then Bill says, let's just swap it out with the old one.
So since our sensors in our harness were 2 wires for the cam sensor and the new engine had a 3-wire cam sensor, I says, let's just take the old ones off and pray that it works. And it didn't.
We researched it though, because we're talking about what does that third pin do? And it's all about the powering of the sensor.
It's signal, yeah. It's going, they're sending some signal. It's a signal wire to the PCM for something, and it just didn't, it wasn't our system. So yes, Herbie's rocking 2 cam sensors from his original engine. So hey, it still works, you know, but that was the best thing we could do. And then we got that done, and then we proceeded to put everything back together. And then it was tedious work, wasn't it? Just
cleaning little things.
Cleaning and putting wire connectors together. I started doing the harness every weekend I was coming up, putting the harness back together. And I kept telling Jeff, no, it's easy. It's not that hard. So I just started, I laid it out, and everything sort of naturally wants to go in place. With the exception of the sensors didn't fit. That was driving me nuts. I was getting frustrated until I figured out what the deal was. But then we started putting it all back together, the connectors, and then I was gone for another weekend for something. And then anyway, Jeff, you took over for the AC. I wasn't here for any of that.
I just went ahead and decided it'd be easiest to assemble everything off the cars, because the whole front of the car is off. So I just took the plastic shroud and just mounted the AC condenser and the radiator and just put everything together, all the hoses, all the connectors. And then just a matter of lifting it up and setting it on the front of the car. And that's when I had one little glitch that could not get the lower AC line. It was on back order. And it's probably the hardest thing to install.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what, I think I can snake it through there later on. So I went ahead and put it all together. But yeah, it wasn't bad at all. If you put it on first. But you talk about your front bumper, because nobody's going to know about this. It's that Easter egg.
Yeah, well, you all might have saw some pictures if you watched the videos, but ultimately I decided to make Herbie a signature bumper, and I took the front bumper home and I de-rusted it, and then I took it and I painted it cherry red. And then I put a MACT sticker on the front and the top of it. And then I had the mechanics that were involved from Ford. They signed it, parts guy. They were involved. Jeff, I signed it. I think Antonio and his girl that was here. We got signatures on it, and I'm gonna get I think Mercedes. Did I get her?
Seemed like she did it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be her car, so.
Yeah. So Mercedes got the signature and everything else. So it's been signed. So that's gonna be funny because I have since then hit a deer with Herbie. So now the front end has to be reworked.
Oh, that's right. He would pull it off.
Sorry, folks. A deer jumped out. It was a horrible deal. But anyway, Herbie's going to the shop. They're going to put fix the bumper cover, repaint it, replace some of the grill inserts and some other stuff. I just imagine you being the body shop guy, you working on all these edges, replacing smashed front ends and everything. Then they pull this bumper cover off and they see this bright red bumper. I just can't wait to see their faces on that. But anyway, we got it, got the wiring harness done, and this is when we're coming under pressure because we had vowed we're going to get this car running in time for Mercedes before graduation. And it was the weekend before graduation, wasn't it? Jeff, he was putting in some days working on this because he wanted to make sure that when I brought Mercedes up that we could finish a couple things and then we could turn the key and start it and she could literally drive it that day. And we came up for the weekend and we had a few things to do and then we had the final start. So we started cranking the engine cold with the
Pressurized it. Yep.
Well, we cranked it with the fuse from the injector, so we had no fuel. And here's the thing we're asking ourselves. This fuel in this car is probably up to 2 years old, but we did pour some out, and it looked really good.
Yeah, we were going to siphon it out, but then Bill says, well, they sometimes have safety features or whatever, anti-theft features.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Oh, but it's right there. So it's snaking a hose down, and instantly you got resistance.
Yeah, there's a check ball in there.
There is, and it's like a highly dense sponge or something.
Yeah.
Right at the tip where it goes into the tank. You're not going to get a hose in there. You're just not going to do it. Gas can leak through it, but you can't get a hose in to siphon it out. But you're right. We took a sample. Some of it pumped through.
Yeah, it looked good.
It looked good, smelled good, and it's a sealed system. So we thought, let's just turn the key.
We did add 5 gallons of new gas to it, though.
I think so.
Yeah,
'cause it wasn't full.
Well, and that was through the new filler tube, right? Because we're underneath there. Well, perfect time to put a new filler tube in.
Yeah.
So we put a new filler tube in, Herbie, too.
Sure
before
did.
We put it all up. But we got it, cranked it over to make sure we had oil flowing that we could see. And then once we had it ready to go, we plugged in that injector, and Herbie cranked up the very first shot. We used old coils from other vehicles, and we found that was a mistake. And I do have new coils for Herbie. There's a couple of misfires occasionally on him, and I think that's because I got an old set of coils in the back that I got to replace. I got them in the car so I can replace all the coils on Herbie, but he runs like a scalded cat.
Yeah.
Not a problem at all. Everything. We did have a shift problem that we figured out in a video, and that was a PCM that failed for the transmission.
It's always the thing we didn't replace.
We didn't replace the PCM, and then I got a hold of Jeremy. He said, hey, was it hard shifted when you had it before the engine? Oh yeah, it was hard shifted. That's when I knew the PCM was shot, because the PCM is made with the transmission control and then engine management and the PCM for other stuff. It's all one unit, folks. So I just bought a new, researched it, and finally came up with a PCM that would be programmable for a 3.5 and a 3.7. So it was programmed and everything else. Haven't had a shift problem with it since. It's been running great. Had hard shifts, but we got that taken care of. We put a Sync 3 system in it.
Yeah, of course. Once things are powered up, we find the APM's crapped out.
Yeah, and we tried to buy a used one, and that didn't work. And then,
but one saving thing, when we got it, we thought the rear hatch assembly was malfunctioning.
yeah, and it turns out it wasn't.
Turned out when it had adequate power, that was a single one thing that did work.
And then the worst thing, the worst job of my life happened to me once we got everything powered up, and we discovered the rear driver's side passenger door latch was bad.
Oh.
And if anybody knows me, I hate working on doors. And Jeff refused to help me.
No.
He says, you got to do it. So he was doing other things. So I says, you know what? The only way to get rid of your fears is by to face it head on. So I went and tore that door apart, and Jeff helped me when I needed extra hands. I replaced the door latch, and we didn't have any door jar issues anymore.
Herbie had an optional remote start, but it wouldn't work.
Yeah,
but it won't work because it thinks the door's open.
Yeah.
So we couldn't really test it till you had the door fixed.
So I did the door, then the remote start started working, everything's running good. And now we're really getting to the point we're just starting to button everything up, get the front end put together. Then Jeff took it to the garage and they did the alignment on it. And
but finishing out, you did swap out the APIM and you got an upgraded Sync 3.
Yeah, the Sync 3 works fantastic.
Oh, that's
Herbie.
amazing.
It's so much I want to do that for my other Edge that I'm driving, Blueberry, but that'll come in later. But yeah, that update to Sync 3, folks, if you got a 2011 through 14 Edge, I cannot tell you enough. Get it. It is worth the money and the effort. But we put everything back together on Herbie, got brand new tires on him, Michelin Defenders.
Yep, evacuated and charged the AC, runs cold.
And I wanted cross climates, Jeff wanted Defenders, and we asked Mercedes, I said, what do you want? And we both did our pros and cons with her on them, and then she went with Jeff's decision. Yeah. Our dad lost out.
Paid her.
Yes. But anyway, we got that all done. It got the tires on alignment, everything's together. Then we came down to the point where it's time to drive Herbie home.
Yep, we evacuated the system and put in the new Ford yellow coolant.
And Herbie is running not 5W20, folks. Herbie has been rocking the 5W30 since day one. So Herbie is running 5W30 motor oil. Is running. We got gear lube in Herbie. In front and rear, we have the Valvoline. Front and rear. I think after we got done working on this 2019, I've sold Jeff on Redline lightweight shockproof because this thing,
like good stuff.
This thing had no metal particles in it after 5,000 miles or so.
Yeah, on Herbie, brand new factory PTU with the correct lubricant already in it from Ford. All we had to do is put it on. And we changed oil in 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
And of course, right away,
had metal shavings on it.
Yeah.
So
we pull the plug, and it's got stuff all over
a good number, yeah. But it's a break-in.
But the break-in fluid was black. 3,000 miles. I mean, looks no different than 150,000 mile PTU.
Yeah. So.
But your Redline.
The Redline is just fantastic.
Came out. It was still blue.
Yeah.
And there's hardly anything on the magnet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I might try that.
We'll be switching Herbie over to the Redline lightweight shockproof here soon. Hopefully it's not too late. I always like that stuff. But anyway, Herbie's got 10,000 miles on him now. So that'll be coming up for an oil change here real soon. And you know me, I run highway with him, so 10,000 mile oil change is nothing for me. And I've proven that I can do it. But anyway, we got Herbie done, so I guess what we got to really start talking about is there's a couple things about cost. The most expensive parts were, of course, the PTU, engine, and transmission. Most expensive parts, folks. Everything else added up in little bitsy pieces all together to come up there. And ultimately, what did we put into it, Jeff?
As far as the parts. Yeah. Parts. I think we're probably around $15,000. But you got to remember, this kind of got to a point where it was like, what if we did this? So our goal was, I mean, we could have gone cheaper. We could have gotten a bunch of aftermarket parts. But I got to a point where, like, come on, everything we've used is OEM. Why stop now? Let's just see how far we can go with this. So we tried to get everything OEM that we possibly could. We wouldn't have had to go new tires. We could have done cut corners, but we kind of just wanted to see if we got to the point where if everything under there that drives this car is brand new, what would it cost? What would it cost? Is it cost prohibitive? Well, if you can do it yourself and have the patience, good luck finding a brand new car for $15,000. With all, and this is a naturally aspirated 3.7, so you don't have the turbos to worry about or anything like that. It's a 500,000 mile motor if you just keep on top of the maintenance. So to me, that's a bargain. But it's,
well, you
it's
can't.
a lot
Well,
of work.
I mean, you're not going to find a car like this on a dealer lot. I mean, Herbie is completely special. It was rebuilt, bottom up, all new parts. So even though the odometer right now says 161,900 miles on it, it only has 10,000 miles on the powertrain and every suspension, everything. You won't find a car in that condition that runs like this. And I'm going to tell you right now, Herbie is a Ford Edge Sport. Okay, it may say SEL on the back of it, but Herbie runs like a Ford Edge Sport. Because guess what? Not only did Herbie get the 3.7, but Herbie actually, I sent the intakes out and had them ported and polished up. So now Herbie's sporting ported and polished intakes that are flow tested, okay? And has a MagnFlow aftermarket exhaust system, okay? So Herbie, I'm not going to say it's a lot of extra horsepower, but I bet you it puts out more than 305 that it's supposed to. And then I can, if I ever wanted to, I got an SET tuner, I can add a tune to that and make it even faster. But I'm looking for longevity, not a lot of speed, because I ain't racing that thing. But Herbie's got enough get up and go to make it go. And he's got the throttle response to go with it. And it beats my 3.5. I can tell just by driving Herbie every time that Herbie will beat any 3.5 I have. So, and it's sporting 18-inch wheels, so it's got that torque to go with those wheels that are smaller, so he can jump off the line pretty quick.
Yeah, one of mine's a 2013, and I couldn't believe the throttle response. I mean, I thought mine was the way all the Edges drove on 3.7. Okay, so what? A little bit more power. Holy crap! When I get in Herbie and hit that gas, I mean, it kicks you back in your seat. I can't believe
it. Runs good.
That thing's got some power.
I don't think I'll beat your Sport, your ST though.
Well, yeah, but it'll last longer.
This might be true.
But when Bill started this up, or had his daughter start it up, no engine light. Nothing we didn't forget to hook up one connector, one vacuum line. Just as we pulled it out, everything was in place.
Well, when we were cranking it over, we were dumping transmission fluid out like a big dog.
I was checking the pump function on the transmission.
Is that what that was?
Okay, I forgot to hook up one line.
That was the only, and the women were going, there's, Herbie's bleeding because it's all red fluid.
So I had to reach over and go, click, and then put more transmission fluid in it.
Yeah. And
then, other than my faux pas, not one engine light, it just ran like a watch.
Herbie's been running good. Like I said, the new PCM took care of everything. And now Herbie's running. I mean, now how many man hours did we put into Herbie? This is where Herbie is not cost effective. Herbie has well over, I want to say 600-700 man hours in him. And if you were to say standard shop time, $125 an hour, then Herbie's a $130,000 vehicle.
But most people aren't going to take down the subframes, spend hours and hours and hours restoring them. But that's the nice thing about doing it to your own car. It's your car, so you can afford the extra time to make sure all these details are taken care of, where another shop wouldn't do all that. They just wouldn't.
Now, if you want to know what a dealer would think Herbie's worth, I took Herbie last weekend to the dealer. And I asked, because they kept asking, well, if you want to trade a car, we'll give you top dollar for your car. So I took Herbie in. They looked at Herbie, didn't even open the hood, didn't look under it, just looked at it, looked at the mileage. They came back, we'll give you $3,000 for Herbie. And then I told the salesman, this is what everything I did. He says, why are you even here trying to trade him in? I said, I'm not trading it in. He says, I wouldn't trade him in either. I'd keep him. So, yeah, even the dealer salesman, once I told him what I did to, he says, why are you even here?
Yeah.
this is all they're going to give you. Yeah, so, yeah, $3,000 all the dealership said it was worth. So, yeah, that's how much you get ripped off at the dealer when you go to try to trade in a car. But I ain't going to sell Herbie. Jeff would kill me if I tried to sell Herbie.
Unless he sold Herbie
Unless
to
I
Jeff.
gave it to Jeff. Yeah, then it'd be all right. But right now, Herbie is going to be my highway vehicle. I'm running it. I know we built it for Mercedes. I'm going to work on getting her my 2011 Limited. She's learned how to drive. I like the all-wheel drive of Herbie. She doesn't need that, and we'll probably end up switching it over to me. But overall, that's what it is, folks. That's what it costs. That's what the man hours were. And overall, I'm going to say I'm proud as I would be a firstborn kid on this thing, because it was a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, literally in some cases.
Labor of love.
So I would not trade. I would not sell Herbie. Herbie's going to be with me till whatever. And my daughters probably wouldn't even sell it, because they know how much effort we put in this car. So that's where it stands, folks. That's how much it cost. After all, we're giving you a ballpark on it, but you're not going to find a Ford Edge that's anything like it, that is in the condition that we refurbished it. So if you're wondering, this is our wrap-up. I know it's probably long-winded, but we enjoyed it. I actually, even though it was a lot of work, I enjoyed it. I was tired and back hurt, everything, but it was worth it. So hope you find this educational. Look at the videos. It tells you how to rebuild an entire car. That series has over 60 videos, I think, in it or something. Wow. And there's nothing that is not covered. I mean, if you want to figure out how to take and rebuild an Edge on any particular part, we covered it in fairly good detail. We might have skipped a few things, but you can't get everything, but we covered most of it. So anyway, thank you, Jeff, for everything you did on that. And what a better working environment in his garage to do it. And he dedicated a lot of his space to this car, because he could have shoved me out the door any day. But I thank him very much for what he did to help me, and all the people that were involved, my wife and daughters, and all the work they put into it and everything else. And all I can say is thank you all for watching the videos and following along as I did it. And remember to like, subscribe, and join to this YouTube channel, because we have some other videos coming. I'm back off my little sabbatical, and this is basically my intro. I got a PTU drilling vehicle video I'm going to put out, and some other stuff on oils and everything else on Herbie, and gear lubes and stuff like that. And then other videos I'm working on, like this 2019 is going to have a video on it. And hey, my MeWe group, folks. I am no longer on that other group. I am on MeWe only. I know you want me to come back to that other group. They've made my life terrible over there. I have a hard time getting in, and Mano's taking care of it. So Mano, he will have you in there. But if you want to get with Mano and I both, you got to go to the MeWe group. And that's MeWe, MACTFORDEDGE on MeWe. And guess what? That group is the largest Ford Edge group on the MeWe platform now. We're approaching 700 members now. I built the other group from one person, and I'm building this group for one person. So the more of you come over, the better it's going to be. In the file section, I can't tell you how much better the file section is in MeWe compared to what was in the other group. You can actually find what you're looking for. So that being said, what I usually say at the end, my feet.
Oh, hit the ground today?
Our feet hit the ground today, so we're having a great day, and we want you to have a great day too. Thanks everybody for watching, and hey, we'll see you on the next side on the next video.
Take care.